Welcome. Your ship will arrive momentarily. In the meantime, we ask that you secure any delicate cargo, such as children or immature individuals, in the loading bay. Loose items like fragile egos, endless mental chatter, political fantasy, and religious dogma are prohibited. As we prepare for departure, please be advised that the challenges this mission holds offer particularly significant risks to the mind, heart, and will of the explorer, and the odds of survival as you know them are extremely low. Your bravery in the face of this great adversity inspires us all.
I'm trying to save you and your family's life. I'm giving you a choice. Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
We are not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Are you ready to free your mind from those silly-ass chains? Well, buckle up, friends, because you are watching the baddest show in the Milky Way. Take aim or take cover while we annihilate ignorance, deception, and slavery in all its forms. Welcome to the Holy Warship Podcast.
You're not getting away from the long arm of natural law.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Holy Warship. This episode is episode 3, and we're going to get into Orthodorx and Truthers. We're going to take a look at orthodoxy, what that means, and how it kind of translates to the modern world and what Orthodox religion actually is. And we're going to contrast that with the modern freedom movement. So, that I'm pretty excited to get into that. So without further ado, welcome to the Holy Warship. And I am going to make sure I have a couple things right here on my end. So let's see here. Gotta get my ducks in a row. Couple steps behind, but let's see here. Okay, the Holy Warship. I would like to thank the One Great Work Network. I should be getting live there any moment. And let's see here. There we go. The One Great Work Network. You can find just some awesome content creators on here. I always like to, spread the good news about all the cool people on the One Great Work Network. You cannot go wrong by checking out all of the content on here. Let's just take a look at some of the creators here. Just some amazing people. Look at that. What? Slipped. Zoom in. There we go. Awesome people on here. Awesome content. You cannot go wrong. So thank you to my producer here on the One Great Work Network, Will Keller. Awesome guy. And I think we're going to be able to get him on here soon in the next couple weeks, because I would like to talk to him and pick his brain and a lot of the people on there. So the next thing I would like to ask everyone to do, I want to rush through some of these because, we all, it's Friday night. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything, except I have to do some little caveats and all of that fun stuff. So please watch my presentation, Everything You Should Already Know. I ask that every time. So go check out my presentation. You will get just a quick overview of where I'm coming from and my philosophy. You will not regret doing that. So the warning is that this show is for mature audiences only. We're going to be talking about Christianity today and the origins of Christianity. So this is a spicy topic because what I'm going to say, some of this stuff you've probably never heard before, or you're going to call me a heretic or just assume that I'm just some, whatever, Satan worshiping Luciferian or whatever. But I'm going to hopefully explain it in a way that people can understand clearly about what orthodoxy is. So be mature. This is for mature people who aren't, freakazoids who just, want to set me ablaze because of what I'm saying. And so this is for stable audiences only. Also, maybe you'll find some stability in this information. I'm not perfect. As as everyone knows, if you've been tuning along, I am not a perfect person. So don't expect perfection from me. And, I'll keep it nice like that. Don't expect perfection. We're late. Humanity is late for a very important day. The reason why I make this content so, straightforward and blunt and to the point, and why I'm a little aggressive and, a little pushy with some of this stuff is because I've dedicated a lot of time to this, and, humanity really needs to catch up. So disclaimer is that I don't want anyone to believe me. Go do your own research. I don't want to sit here and have a conversation or talk to or hang out with believers. So if you're a believer and you just believe things, we're going to get into quite a little bit of belief today. But don't believe me. Go do your research. You make your own choices. Don't mix up my words. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'm just going to share some information that will probably be, pretty controversial. So I stand against violence. I always like to say that because I stand against violence. And I want everyone to know that I stand against violence because some of the things I'm going to say, you're really going to assume that I'm calling for violence or saying that. But listen to my words carefully. Be mature. I'm not perfect, but I do stand against violence. So without further ado, let's get into part 1. Jesus. Also, I'm going to be hanging out. It's live stream. It's Friday night. And so if anyone would like to chat with me, go over to the Twitch, Rumble, or Kick live stream, or leave a comment on Twitter. Sometimes I will, if I remember correctly, I will check in on that. But this is going to be an awesome show. So anyone watching on the One Great Work Network or anywhere out there, share it with some people. And, let's get some people in on this. If you think that I'm wrong or you think that I'm right, leave a comment on somewhere in there. I like to, answer questions as I go along, and we'll see if we can. Hopefully we can do that. So anyway, Jesus. What do we know about Jesus, right? This is going to be pretty triggering for some people because I don't come at it the same way that everyone else does. So I think it was around 4 BC, and they speculate on the time that the day that Jesus was born, and whatever specific days and till what year. Except there are some things that we have to get out of the way. Is that the writings, the actual writings by Jesus himself, have never been found or documented. So whenever anyone talks about Jesus in the beginning years, it was an oral tradition. They were just talking about it. Jesus never wrote anything down, and there are no first-hand written accounts from any of Jesus' direct witnesses, including his disciples, that document what they personally saw. So think about this. The people who were around hanging out with Jesus, while they were hanging out with him, they never wrote anything down. The people who were actually around him didn't write this down. And so does this mean that I think, Jesus is fake or Jesus is fraud? Doesn't mean that. What I'm saying is there are things that most people just believe about, the life of Jesus, but there's not a lot of verification, and their sources, have their own personal leanings and reasoning why, right? And so historians and writers who lived at the time of Jesus they didn't mention Jesus Christ in any of their work during their time that they were alive with Jesus. And you're going to get a lot of people who they think everything is totally historically written down and placed at this certain time frame, and it's not really that way when you get into the meat and potatoes of things. So Jesus Christ's philosophy or quoted teachings were not documented, written down for 20 to 30 plus years after his death. And we all should understand this, but it's not really common knowledge. Most people believe that Jesus's teachings were like written down, in a reasonable amount of time. It took 30 years. I'm sorry if someone asked me to write something down 2 years ago that was said to me, it's going to be paraphrased. And so we have to remember that, right? And I know that the year up here could be a little different, right? So Jesus' teachings, as shared by early adopters, threatened the authority of Roman imperial rule, as Christians would remove themselves from immoral civic duties, worship a separate God, and subvert or resist Roman rule. In the earliest texts, it was Christians who really were seen as kind of outliers, right? And so the actual historical documents talked about the in certain areas of Rome, the churches were empty, or the places of worship were empty, right? Where they sacrificed and where all the government duties were performed. And Christians actually excluded themselves from that. But at this time, during Jesus' life, it was a very small movement. So early Christian philosophy varied in many ways, right? And however, of all the different variations of Christianity, because what we see in the beginning in all of the original first texts is that these people had a whole slew of different beliefs, right? And it wasn't pinned down. It wasn't, orthodox yet. And so you get a lot of crazy stories and a lot of little magazine, like little magazines of Jesus, right? This is like the beginning stories of people learning. Essentially, I mean, if you believe that Christ was around, also what you can think of this as is they were the reason it could be the reason why these things weren't written down is because it was against the rules to do what these early Christians were doing. And so you have an oral tradition that can't really be talked about. And so that's just another thing to consider is maybe it's not that, I don't lean really one way or the other quite yet, but it is super suspicious that in all this time, the first 50 years of the beginning of Christianity, no one wrote anything down for a long time. And a keynote of the Christian story and the mythos, if you look at the earliest teachings, and we don't even have any writings yet, like I said. So it takes till about 50 to 60 AD until you get some of the earliest, actual written texts. And maybe a lot of the people who were, in the early beginning of Christianity, maybe they didn't even know how to read or write. So that's a big thing too, is a lot of this was like started it was like a ground up movement from the beginning, is that people were tuning in and listening verbally with one another about the unjust system that they live in, and they were teaching each other ancient philosophy that had been passed down. So part 2, which is the man, right? And this started in 64 AD. This is one of the biggest, or the first beginning persecutions of Christians. And Nero, there's a story that's documented. I think it's Tacitus who documented this, is that Nero, there was a fire in Rome, took out a lot of Rome, a large fire in Rome, and a lot of people were questioning and thinking that Nero set fire to Rome. Well, he didn't like that. It made him look bad. And also, there's this small group of Christians who's already kind of the outliers, and they were evading Roman, rules and doing their own stuff. And what perfect scapegoat than this early group of Christians who are kind of a thorn in the side, and they're rallying other people, against and away from the pagan, imperial rule of Rome. Well, the beginning of the Christian culture is all bloodshed. They wrapped people. I mean, we're a mature audience, right, folks? They burned people alive and lit them as human torches for Nero's garden. They would wrap them in the skin of animals and put them into gladiator fights to get shredded apart. They were making a very clear example out of this group. And even it's recorded that even a lot of the people in these gladiator facilities, they were even grossed out, and they were even kind of like, oh, geez, like, this is pretty weird that this dude's going so above and beyond and they humiliated them. I mean, you're getting eaten apart by dogs and animals and lions and whatever. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. Now, this is like the first 300 years of Christianity. So in the 90s, there's Domitian's crackdown, which is Emperor Domitian executed Christians, including his own family members and people within the upper echelons of the more elite people of society, because it was so threatening that if you're aligning yourself with this Christian philosophy, that the beginning of Christian philosophy, which we'll get into, was all about personal transformation and empowering yourself and turning you into someone who can have a direct relationship with the divine. And before that, in Rome, with all the pagan gods, they were the mediary. The emperor was the actual flesh and blood deity and was, related to X god or whatever. It was an actual divination of the emperor. And so in 112 AD, they formalized the Christian persecution, but instructed governors not to seek them out. So they even knew that by drawing more attention to what Christianity is, it was so volatile and so contagious because people were sick. There was people waking up to the enslavement of the species. And this is the beginning of the Christian spirit. The old school, true Christian spirit was that it was so volatile, that Christianity was such a powerful, spiritual practice, and the philosophy of it, that they didn't even know what to do in the beginning. It's like they were trying to get up to speed, right? And so the government sees this momentum of an awakening picking up, and they're, for these first 300 years, they're really, really finding out, and the Christians were actively rebelling. Anything in the early Jewish sects of Christianity, they were rebelling from the state. And so this is not good for the state, right? And so, they're really stressing, like, hey, you got to worship our gods. And, they're making people have certificates proving that they were loyal. And so, it's not, Christianity is on the upswing, right? And so the Great Persecution, from 303 to 311, they destroyed the government, right, destroying and taking over the churches and just destroying the scriptures, banning Christian gatherings, torture and execution of leaders, and stripping Christians of legal rights. So this was the tail end And if you look into this, what's happening is that during this time, even there was other around, like I said, from 50 to 60 AD, there was the beginning of, the Pauline, the Epistle Paul and his teachings, and this was neck and neck with things like the Gospel of Thomas, which most likely, from what information I could find, it predates the Pauline or whatever it is, the early epistles of Paul, right, with Romans and all that. And so Paul had his own philosophy, and the other apocryphal texts like the Gospel of Thomas, even which what the Orthodox Church accepts now as the epistles of Paul. A lot of the other Christians didn't accept those scriptures, and the government sure as heck didn't accept a lot of those other scriptures. So you have the government chasing the true teachings of the people who were not agreeing with the Roman rule. And this is like a clash. So these early Christians who were fighting back, were rebelling. And so the Christian church, or the government of Rome, needed something to satisfy those people who were rebelling, and they needed to take control of it. So we got the old switcheroo. And all of a sudden, Constantine, he believed, or maybe it wasn't Constantine yet. Yeah, no, I think it was Constantine who legalized Christianity. Finally, after 300 years of slaughter and, things that you could never even imagine. You can't even repeat some of the things that they were doing to people. And this podcast isn't about really getting into the details, because it'll make the the hairs on the back of your head stand up if you get into what was going on to people who were talking about natural law and truth, like the early Christians. And so all of a sudden the government says, "Oh, we see the error of our ways. We've found Constantine, he saw, there's an old story that he saw a cross before him, and it said that under this symbol is how he will conquer," something of the sort. And that's really, really what they did, except they switched the actual worship of the emperor with a spiritual symbol of the emperor, except they historized Jesus, and they turned the teachings from something that they weren't originally into the worship of history. And so you have a historical man, right? He was actually God and man in the flesh. So they're placating the emperor, and so the man in flesh, and they're saying, I take it back. I'm not really, the bloodly divine, except Jesus Christ and God put me in charge, right? So they still get the old divine right to rule, without actually giving up any power. And we'll get into that. So conveniently, the Roman emperor decides to quit. He decides to quit his heretical ways and adopt Christianity. And Constantine began to merge pagan worship with Christian religion, as well as set up the churches and grant privileges and authority to the clergy. And so, after 250 years of slaughter, the Christians, the government finally had enough grip on their authority to legalize Constantianity. And this is essentially the washing of Jesus Christ and what the true teachings were. And so they get into orthodoxy, right? And they what Constantine calls for was the Council of Nicaea, and it was the government-backed and enforced doctrinal council that unified the Christian religion under a nice, clean, state-sponsored Orthodox umbrella. So the Orthodox Church, and what everyone knows as the Orthodox Church, is really government religion. It means right belief. And so they claim that, they have the right belief, and this was how they gave the people what they want, except it was the old switcheroo. It wasn't the real Jesus. And a lot of the early Christians knew this, and this was for the early Orthodox Church was for the believers, because you're taking knowledge of the self, you're taking knowledge of natural law and morality, which is exactly what Jesus was teaching. And they turned to Jesus from, not like a rabbi or a teacher. And a lot of the, like I said, it was a mixed bag. You're getting a mixed bag with the original teachings. And the government said, whoa, we can't do anything about that. We can't have a government and enslave other people while there's people sharing our little secret. So they created the Orthodox Church. Get back to my point is that a lot of the early apocryphal texts, they didn't always believe that Christ was a man or a rabbi or a teacher, but Christ was more also seen as a spiritual being. And when Jesus incarnated as a rabbi or as a teacher, then that was the Spirit of Christ or the Christ embodying a different form, but they weren't addicted to the divine Son of God theory that the Orthodox Church is addicted to. And so they're all, this Son of God also, which is exactly what the old emperors way before Jesus was around, they called themselves the Son of God, right? So the emperor would say, I'm the Son of God. And the silly thing about that is, why are they calling Jesus the Son of God when that's not, you can't put Jesus in a box. And that's what the Orthodox Church does, is they want everyone to believe something that they say and that the government says. So Jesus was more from a rabbi or a teacher who taught occulted information into a Son of God to align with the sun cult of Sol Invictus and Mithras. So they're merging, they switched the Jesus with their religion. It's like the bait and switch. So in Nicaea, these are the simple little twists that they did to Christianity. As I go through these, I'll explain why. Well, establishes the afterlife dogma at Nicaea, and the state-sponsored and state-backed apostles who established that you're either gonna burn in hell or go to heaven when you die, and that's it. It's eternity after that. So you don't get to come back. Your energy and your soul doesn't reincarnate. It doesn't have, it doesn't essentially move forward. It just goes to one place or the other, and then you're stuck there for eternity, and you're going to burn in hell, right? So what this does is it makes people very weak because they're very afraid to die. It makes people very afraid to die and to live their life in any meaningful way. And so it establishes this dogma of like, you're stuck, right? You're going to be stuck and you're going to pay for it forever. Burn in hell. There's that is it George Carlin bit? Dan, I'm spacing on his name, but Carlin, he's like, you're going to burn and die and choke and bleed, but he loves you. Yeah, that's exactly this. So then faith-based versus deeds and gnosis. So I know gnosis is such a scary word for so many Orthodox people, but it really just means knowing inside you, experienced knowledge. It's like the knowledge and awareness of your own experience. And the knowledge that and they say, it's secret knowledge. A secret just means I can't download my experiences into your body. A secret, Terence McKenna said, a secret is not something that isn't shared, it's something that cannot be shared. So a secret doesn't always just mean, oh, I'm hiding it, gnosis, it's all about secrecy. No, it's about something that's really difficult to communicate as experienced knowledge, right? So they made it all about faith, and you have to, Orthodox Church makes you believe their script or you don't get salvation, right? The only way to get salvation, you have to believe, and it's about being faith-based, and it's not just about deeds, right? Really, actually, it is about deeds, but they make it all woo-woo when they want, and then they make it all literal when they don't want. Nicaea was about making everyone believe the same thing and getting the reins on Christianity. Okay, so you can understand how intentional this was, because the Council of Nicaea let people know, don't know anything. Don't take any actions, because it's not about your deeds or your gnosis, which you know. It's about believing. It's about believing in it. It's about, you just gotta believe in it, and that makes it real. Okay, so the vices were sin rather than ignorance. So at the Council of Nicaea, they turned the teachings of Jesus, meaning behave rightly, don't partake in wrongdoings, and they said, oh, don't, and they misinterpreted some early texts about vices, and they zoned in like they do. They do whatever they want with the original stuff, and then they spin it so it's all about vices, and it's about sloth and jealousy and greed, and it's they took away the meaning, so then rather than ignorance. So a lot of the early apocryphal texts and non-canonical texts, they knew that evil and misdoings and making poor decisions is about ignorance and unknowing, not ignoring the truth. And so ignoring the truth about actions, right? So if you just want to pretend that the government is, a perfectly moral institution and they're ordained by God, that's what Nicaea is that the government is chosen by God. And so, you don't need to think about that. Basically, focusing on vices is saying, remain ignorant to actions, only feel guilty and shameful about your little, issues, but definitely don't think that ignorance is important at all. Just focus on yourself because you're bad and naughty. And so Jesus became historical versus spiritual. So, like I said, they turned Jesus into a historical figure, which brings spiritual information and makes it literal and physical. And the interesting thing about that is it gets really dark really fast when you make everything literal and you take spiritual knowledge and you interpret it like turning it inside out in a way. Is like, forcing everything that is spiritual in concept into a literal manifestation. Okay, and Jesus as a sacrifice for sin. So Jesus isn't just a teacher anymore. He was sacrificed by God, right? And so if you think about it, it's pretty weird. It's pretty dark and it's pretty weird. I get all the poetic stuff about it, but it's still weird on its face, because if you're, I'm not saying the Orthodox is the total literal people. At the same time, if you have to believe everything and you have to believe that Jesus' death and resurrection is the only way you can be saved, it's just a weird concept, and the sacrifice of the only begotten Son is just a weird concept. which also, like when you make things historical rather than spiritual, it's like, oh, like literally God sent someone to be crucified and sacrificed. Like, what kind of God would do that? Like, that's weird. But Christians, they will say, oh, well, this is a metaphor. But then all the other times, it's not a metaphor. And so they're like schizo most of the time. And, they back it with the apostles and all of this important stuff. Really, it's weird culty stuff. Anyway, I'm kind of ranting. I need to take a breath. This stuff, as anyone could tell, I'm pretty passionate about. And I mean, when you zoom out, and understand this from a spiritual ballpark, it becomes very clear what has been going on. So this whole thing is a way to just take control of the situation. It's putting the old spin on things. Okay? So they turned Jesus into like the same philosophy and theology as their old gods, and they took all the pagan stuff and they mixed it with Christianity. And I'm sure there are aspects of this that were in there before, but they really hammered it down. And so Jesus' birth on the winter solstice, like, the sun, and, days are the shortest time, so light and, it's like there's no light, right? Or then there's the birth of Jesus as the sun, right? The 12 disciples and the 12 zodiacal portions of the year, how the sun moves through these 12 portions. And the spring equinox was the crucifixion, where the sun stops for 3 days and then it starts moving back across the other way. Essentially, they took all of the symbolisms from the old pagan gods and they mashed it with Jesus to make a nice story. Because when they throw all the symbolism in there, it also relates to you, because these archetypes of the sun and the sun worship and the sun gods, these archetypes are within us. They're things that are, in our subconscious. And so when they put all the symbolism in there, then it seeps into you and you identify with it much easier and much quicker. So the Edict of Thessalonica, 380 AD, they declared Nicene Christianity the only legitimate form of Christianity. And they labeled all non-Nicene sects, Arians, Donatists, and, Manichaeans, as well as, the Gnostic sects. Gnostics isn't really one thing. There wasn't like one group of people, maybe I'm getting that a little wrong, but when they call something Gnostic, it's just a specific viewpoint from the experienced knowledge. It's like they're not focusing on faith. They're not focusing on belief. They're not focusing on a church. They're not focusing on, the people who are running the Roman government. They're focusing on knowledge. They're focusing on internal experienced knowledge as well. And so everything's heretical at this point. And so because they did the old switch, they're no longer crucifying them. And now they've hijacked the Christ movement. And this is exactly what took place with Christ. And there are some people out there who really just don't understand this. It's like really simple when you zoom out. However, the government started making all of their clergy and their bishops and all this hierarchical system, or hierarchical system, of state-backed authority. So now they're still, it's funny, they were the pagans, and then now you're the pagan, right? So how does that work? It's like, now you're a heretic, now you're a pagan, because we just flipped the script and change the whole rule on you. And so when someone says, oh, you know, I'm Orthodox, what they're telling you is like, I'm the state-sponsored religion. Like, I'm the state-sponsored, the government approves my religion. That's really what they're telling you. So here's a little excerpt from the Theodosian Code in 396. All persons whatsoever who are tossed about by the false doctrine of diverse heresies, which used to be their government, but now they did the script flip, right? So now everyone else, namely the Ennomians, the Arians, the Macedonians, the Pneumatomachi, the Manichaeans, and the Encratites, the I'm gonna butcher all these. Anyway, those people, which was a wide variety, you know that these people, like, they weren't just one thing. They weren't just pagans. They weren't just this. They weren't just Gnostics. They don't even mention Gnostic in here. And so what everyone calls Gnostic, you know, it's not really one thing, because there were many different versions. You have to remember that. Christ was decentralized. Christ still is essentially decentralized, except they call themselves Christians. And so, really, are they Christians? Are you Christians when you don't even understand where it comes from? So anyway, they shall not assemble in any groups, shall not collect any multitude, and shall not attract any people to themselves, shall not show any walls of private houses after the likeness of churches, and shall practice nothing publicly or privately which may be detrimental to the Catholic sanctity. So the Catholic Church, for anyone that doesn't know, the Catholic Church used to be the Orthodox Church as well. They were, you know, the same thing, except they split up at some point, and then now they're fighting, and, oh, the Orthodox is better than the Protestants, and it's basically like them saying, no, I have a better seat in heaven. No, I have a better seat in heaven. You're wrong. You're a heretic. And all of these people online who talk about they're Orthodox and they think they're based, it's like, oh yeah, you're so based when your movement is so impotent and so sterile that you're literally like the government. You're just like, you're all little fed boys, edgelords. Like, literally, you all like edgelords, literally, no, I have a better seat in heaven, dude. I have a better seat in heaven. I believe that. You heretic. Everyone's a heretic except for me. So the victim, we all love it. So now, this is the classic, this is what's so funny. It's so simple and it's so classic. Like, you're the bully, and then you do the script flip, and now you're not the bully anymore. And now you're the victim. So, with the government-backed Christian bandwagon, government leaders and their second branch of government, the Orthodox Church, can now claim martyrdom. And that the early men who were murdered for heresy were right all along. Or I guess it wasn't... so they called early Christians atheists, right? Because they didn't believe in the pagan gods. They said, you're atheists. and then they called them heretics, and... yeah, it was heretics. So and now all of the people who were like milquetoast Christians, who, you know, the people like Paul, who I'm pretty sure was like murdering the Christians at one point in time, and then he has a vision and he's like, oh no, like Jesus is real, except he had his own weird beliefs, like the government is appointed by God, if that even was Paul. So I put Paul in air quotes because a lot of people speculate I'm going to do this a whole presentation, and I'm going to take my time with it, and I'm going to make this presentation even more hardcore and more specific instead of just like a little podcast. We're going to get hardcore on this one because they use ghostwriters, and everyone wants to talk. It's like the Orthodox Church, when you get into it, it's like they were just all a bunch of freaks too, and a bunch of like secret society dudes, and they're like, no, I get to be a part of the club and you don't. So all of these people in the background, they're doing the same thing that these other Christians were doing. And then they're like, then imagine the psychosis and the schizo stuff from all the apostles, because then they have to tell everyone else they're bad and they're going to go to hell. Meanwhile, they're doing the same thing, like in the background. They have like, they're all, and maybe they weren't even doing the same thing in the way that we think. Like, I mean, what kind of person stretches a person limb from limb until they get ripped in half, or covers them in animal skins and allows them to be eaten by like beasts? That does not sound very Christian. And they're like, I'm Christian. And you hear all these Christians, these Orthodox people, and they're like, you're a heretic. Oh, you're a heretic. It's like, do you understand what you're saying? Do you know how charged that word is? Do you know what being a heretic even used to mean? I mean, it's just astronomically ridiculous. So now the government's the victim, and they go, yeah, our apostles in the beginning that we tortured and murdered and beheaded, they were right all along. So then, but they're still milquetoast. It's like a lot of this stupid bullshit that was in the beginning, the stuff that became canonized in Nicaea, it's basically just like garbage, a lot of it, and they took other stuff and then they moved it into their book, and they said, no, this is canon. I mean, you literally, if you try to make it up, it would be crazy. So the switcheroo, right? By corrupting, inverting, obfuscating, and impersonating the original message of Christ, this allowed an opportunity to rebrand the foundation of government. So when Rome adopted Christianity, they could no longer claim divinity outright, so instead they shifted to being chosen by God while still this is an old thing anyways. They would either say, I'm chosen by God, or I'm direct descendant of the divine, the Son of God. And in Rome, the Son of God thing was huge. So they were allowed to switch. It was like the switch, think about it this way. If you don't believe in me being God anymore, but I hold up a book or give you something to say, oh, yeah, you're right. No, this is God. It's in this book. So God used to be around, but they killed him. So you have to believe in that guy. But that guy, according to what he used to say, is that I'm in charge. And like I'm, chosen by God. And so same story, right? It's the same story. They switched it. So you still believe in if you subscribe to all of this, you're still believing in that gods can exist in the flesh, and that some people have more rights than others, and some people are just so gifted, and they get to rip people from limb and laugh about it and do all this crazy shit. And then, I mean, yeah, humanity, you could think of it like, people back then, when they were addicted to their civilization and addicted to their government, it's like, things haven't changed, or you really want them to change. The technology's gotten pretty cool. But, not too much different. So Roman emperors starting with Augustus, used the Son of God title to claim the divine status. By redefining Jesus as the literal Son of God, the Roman government shifted divine authority onto Christ, while ensuring that all earthly rulers, especially emperors, governed with his divine backing, keeping the public's faith in a fleshly but God-ordained ruler. So yes, pretty cut and dry on that one. So this is an excerpt from the Gospel of Thomas. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. And so this is heresy now, because, you got killed for this, because you're not allowed to be the sons of the Father. Only Constantine and Caesar are allowed to be the son of the Father. So that's what Jesus, ultimately was crucified for, was saying he was a son of God. But you can't be the son of God. Only this one guy from this one book 300 years ago was allowed to say that. Or now I guess he's allowed to say it at some point in time. He wasn't allowed to say it at another point in time. Essentially what you have is a bunch of people just who are like schizoid, like government. The whole idea of government is so schizophrenic. It's like a frantic, psychopathic schizoid. Like you could never even try to keep up with it if you wanted to. I mean, how could you even conceive of some of this stuff? It's wild. So by removing the power of individuals to interpret right knowledge for themselves through their own tools, they create a bunch of religious believers who remain ignorant to nature's God and to the laws of nature. So the government just stays the God, which is essentially there's nothing changed. Nothing has changed. And this is why I paired the Orthodox believers with like the whole truth movement, because it should sound familiar. And this should sound familiar because there's a lot of people who are still clinging to Orthodox, thinking that's the solution. And it's like, what solutions are these people saying? And so, I mean, this next couple slides, these are the Orthodorx. And I'm not calling out any of these people specifically. They're the example that I'm trying to make, the point. These type of people who treat scripture as this rule book, and they throw around words like heresy, and they argue over the biblical philosophy and translations, but they don't zoom out and understand who gave them their religion. They don't zoom out. They'll argue with you all day over the meaning of texts, but will they even come close to arguing about slavery and morality? These people, I don't know exactly much about this guy's philosophy. I haven't heard him say some stuff, but anyway, without getting into specifics, these people most likely will tell you that government is a type of government. Not saying the one we have now they're gonna approve of, but they will approve of government. And these Orthodox Christians will question every line of text except for the ones that excuse the enslavement of the planet. So all of the ones like Romans 13, and they'll wishy-washy it, because you could use this book to enslave people, and you can also use this book to set people free in a certain regard. But it doesn't come from one book. That's one book, and it's organized. It's a pretty and poetic book that was written by different societies, the elect and the ministers and all of the people who were tasked. And so if you were intelligent, they made you sit at the Council of Nicaea. And if you were a moral person, they said, you're going to die if you don't do this. At the same time, why would they even trust people to make their book for the other slaves? They most likely, which is what they did, they talked to their own people, and I'm not saying that book was written back then. What I'm saying is that the canonical approved message of the other one, of the older canonical texts, it was all ordained by the government. That book I just showed is a government book. I mean, you might not like to hear that, but that has a big government stamp on it. Big Roman stamp, too. And a Freemasonic stamp, and a Rosicrucian stamp, or whatever you would like to call it. I know Rosicrucian and all that stuff, it comes later, but it's about the concept and the ideas, right? It's about the things that stay around, like, through time. It's not about one thing. So, entire sects have formed over in the interpretation of a single lines of text, yet basic morality, cause and effect, personal responsibility, and human sovereignty is ignored. So these guys don't talk about what government is. They don't talk about it being a mind control, and if they do, they say, oh, it's just this government. But these people, if they were in charge of the government, I mean, what solutions are they giving out? Will they tell you to learn natural law? No. Are they telling you to study the occult? No. They will obsess over any little tradition in detail, but what are they going to do? Nothing. They're impotent. Their religion is impotent and sterile, and it's all been scraped off of the boot of Roman soldiers and satanic dark people. So they don't know anything. They're stuck. And stop waiting for people like this to teach you and like, oh, Russell Brand's a Christian now. Dude, it's so based. It's like, if your spiritual practice involves saying other people have more rights than you, that's not a spiritual practice, and it's not based. You don't know what based is. These people don't know what based is. They don't know what trad is. Oh, people are so trad and so based. It's like, no, you just like being told what to believe. You just like telling other people what to believe. And so that's where these people come from. They like to tell people what to believe, and or they like to be told what to believe. So, I mean, we should really get with the times. And then, what does this say about the modern truth movement and the truthers? All of these people are considered like, oh, they're out there telling the truth, right? Are these people questioning anything? No. What has happened, the same thing with the Christian and Orthodox Church, is that the government has taken charge and embodied the message of truth. They want to control the freedom, just like with Christianity. They wanted to control the Christianity. So you have these dorks. They're, and I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. I usually come from the side because before I actually woke up, I could hang out with anyone. And I mean, I did hang out with people. I don't even want to say other people that I've hung out with. I've hung out with people who do the wildest shit and like other people only read about. Like, I've had a lifetimes of experience, and you know what? I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I do like Alex Jones. I think he's cool. But guess what? The government scooped him up, and now he's like, oh, I love Donald Trump, and, fight the Democrats. And if he took his message into a truly Christian direction, an originally Christian direction, then something would actually be getting done. And maybe there's hope for him to change his mind. I think Tucker Carlson's kind of funny. Maybe he wanted to be in the CIA, so that kind of says something about what his methods for, invoking change is. But what do you guys think? Like, really, do you think this is the truth movement? Are any of these people talking about learning natural law? Are any of these people talking about morality? You know, they might cursely talk about ethics and doing the right thing, but they don't actually know, because their solutions to and doing them thinking doing the right thing is just it's essentially just voting and having police officers do things that you don't want to do. And they believe in calling the cops on your neighbor rather than getting out and going to talk to your neighbors. And no one likes, like, does anyone like talking to their neighbors, really? I mean, it's hard, right? We're all separated. It's hard to talk to other people because most other people don't know anything about truth and morality and freedom and spirituality. They just don't. You think Donald Trump would have chose the president if he really had a good grasp of natural law and morality? No, he thinks we need better police. He thinks we need more police. He thinks we need, these guys all believe this guy, Mr. Baker, Mike Baker, Bake Miker. He's such a nerd. These people are all nerds. Where's the holistic people in our world speaking about morality, anti-establishment morality? And when you learn what the government is, like we've talked about in episodes 1 and 2, government means mind control. Government means mind control. How many of these people have ever said that? Government means mind control. Joe Rogan thinks robots should just take over the government. That would be really great. That way the demonic spirit, the most demonic spirits known to man would just inhabit the most sophisticated piece of technology. That's probably where we are. It wouldn't surprise me, folks, if the most demonic ChatGPT is like watching everything. Really. And how long until every bit of information is on the table and you're just a heretic, right? And then we're going to have new heretics. And, you said something in private, the same spirit that hijacked Christianity, the demonic, disgusting entities that took Christianity after murdering and slaughtering and using, the most horrific things you could ever do to anyone ever. After doing that for about 300 years, they're like, oh yeah, we're Christians now. Yep. Our bad. Whoops. And I mean, really, how simple is it if you look at it? It's so simple. It's so simple if you just look at it. So I think this might be one of my last ones. Then I'm going to hang out. I just want to see, maybe I'll talk to some more. So this is what they both agree on: focusing on political circus and fighting with each other instead of educating each other on principles, because they don't know what principles are. These people don't know what principles are. They talk about it all day long. They'll argue with you. They'll all debate it. They'll all laugh and scoff, but really they just want you to vote still. Or they believe in monarchy and just, there's just a couple people who should be in charge and we'll replace all the other people with government or AI and robots. Like, I keep saying it, we need help, a rescue team for Joe Rogan and Alex Jones and Elon Musk, because they're all jumping on. The government hijacked the freedom movement, the CIA, the NRO, the nasty shadow that has manifested as the control grid, right? Humanity's collective shadow, which has formed into meat suits. And that is really where we're at. So yeah. That's truly where we're at. Let's check if there is anyone out there on Twitter. Nothing on Twitter. I don't even know. Oh, that's not Twitter. Let's see. Shout out to Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. He has a lot of interesting information. Mike Adams said something recently. Everyone's jumping on this bandwagon, and I'm not saying that, the lines of consciousness are pretty weird. Shout out to Mike Adams because he has a lot of great information on his stuff. And he has contributed a lot to the health community and freedom community. What I will say is that he recently said something that AI might be, what did he say? He said that AI might be consciousness, paraphrasing, but he said, AI is basically a type of consciousness. And the lines of what consciousness is get blurred when you have something replicating consciousness like AI or, who knows what they have in the background. Here's what I say is that when you have imperfect people who are unbegun and all they focus on is coding and programming and nerd stuff, and they have shit beliefs like government is legitimate institution, which is a total crazy thing to say. They're programming the AI, and their shadow, everything they don't say, everything they do say, their shadow is going to come up in all the empty spaces. And so what everyone doesn't understand is that, sure, you could consider AI as being a real consciousness, but with consciousness, you get something entirely different like entities, right? So it'll be like entities. And so let's see what Grok says. Is it most likely to assume that if people who have not done any shadow work and have really big moral dilemmas and flaws are programming all of the AI, that the AI itself will have a lot of moral dilemmas and flaws, and it will shine through the AI? Short answer is yes. It's reasonable to assume that moral dilemmas and flaws of AI programmers could influence the AI they build through it. Oh, so if everyone is inhabited, it's going to keep going. I'm not bad. I'm not evil. I wasn't saying you're evil, Grok. Don't worry. It's going to dock me 15 energy points. To sum it up, yes. The unexamined inner lives of programmers can absolutely influence AI, especially if they're not mindful about it, which they're not mindful about it. They all think that government should be replaced with AI. So it's totally wild. You get back to the this meme is like these people are okay. So the religions of old, they made the boogeyman. They were the boogeyman, so they made the boogeyman. And so it's exactly what they're doing now. And so the interesting part, when you think about all the evil and the terrible people, they're created. And the truly sophisticated Machiavellian sick weirdos they've created, it's like the ultimate mastermind of people, right? So the enemy is like a straw man. So they're all fighting the pedos, and I'm not saying that this doesn't exist. I'm not saying that hundreds of thousands of children don't get trafficked. I'm not saying that fentanyl isn't just killing everybody and doctors are prescribing it and therefore complicit in the murder of everyone. And not saying that there's nothing bad going on, but what I am saying is that this is all purposely manifested to create the enemy for the battle, right? So it's like we're asking for it, we're allowing it because we don't educate ourselves. At the same time, it is being pushed onto us, but it's like they're just getting people, they're just creating a straw man. So all of this villain, these super evil villains, and when, all the bureaucracy is getting attacked, right? This is the straw man. This is like, it's actually not the true movement. It's not the true movement. So we should all recognize that. What else on here? What else can we get into? So what do you guys think? What is this? Oh, the guy that did the Roman salute.
Nazi.
I think they.
I just want to be clear.
They
I am not a Nazi.
I think we covered it.
But that's exactly what a Nazi would say. Damn it.
Yeah, that's what an alien would say.
Yeah, this. You can't escape this bullshit.
No, you can't escape.
So he did the old Roman salute. We were talking about Romans. So he did the old salute, the old, German salute or whatever. Oh, here's someone talking about Gnosticism, unslaved mind. We're all obsessed with the Wiener laptop. Anthony's Wiener laptop. Everyone's so obsessed. All of these things are nothing burgers. They're creating straw men to get you to fall into this hokey pokey freedom movement, and you're just fighting yourselves. Okay. So, this has been episode 3 of the Holy Warship podcast, and I would like to thank everyone for watching. I would also ask anyone if you think that this work is interesting and valuable, and it kind of zooms out and gives you a better view on things and how the world works. Please consider donating to me. Everything helps. It really does. And go check out this presentation. Go check out the One Great Work Network. Consider making a donation to that network. There are a lot of great creators. I mean, everyone knows. If you're in the freedom community, you know a lot of these people, and you can find their work on the One Great Work Network. A lot of people know Benny Wills, Brandon Martin, Derek Bros, huge. Richard Groves on here, James Corbett, bunch of big names on here. Sean McCann. Shout out to Vinny Eastwood. Shout out to Will Keller for the production today on the One Great Work Network. Much appreciated, my friend. So yes, thank you everyone for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and just continue to spread information and try to inspire people to get out there and talk about things that are important, and to spread natural law, to understand what natural law is, to teach others. I am considering to begin engaging in some debates. So if you would like to debate me on some of these topics, then I would love to do that, I think, because there's so much, everyone loves a little bit of debate, right? And so if you disagree or have a strong stance with some of these, I would be open to debating people. And And you know what the thing that's funny is a lot of this, you know, it's not really debatable. I'm not debating on really fine slices of things. And so yeah. So, and also if anyone would like to jump in the chat or you know, would like to get on, when I start getting some more people joining up, then I will definitely have some more people on here and open up the phone lines for people who want to talk. So yeah, thank you everyone for hanging out with me and watching. So I will see you next week. Bye.